right, so we're in Substance now. We're gonna work in Substance, and we're gonna build that crate so we can export it. Today you're gonna have more time in class to work on this, so I can help you specifically with problems that you need. But I'm gonna walk through it again since we did it last week with the sword in Substance. We're gonna do it this time with the crate. Let's get that crate ready because I want to bring that crate into Unity next week, so we can be moving on and getting into some more advanced techniques, possibly. May have another half a week of Unity, but we'll see where we get. So let's go to File. I'll go to New. I'm going to say Select. I'm going to come over to the super low res one that we made for class, that I made for class. I'm going to say OK and select it. Oh, what? No, it said say OK and say OK. Sorry. There we go. So I'm going to change. F1 does the dual screen, so I have the 3D and the 2D. F2 does just the 3D. I'm going to do just the 3D for now. So here's the cube. Here's the cube. Now I need to import that sucker in. So let's go to this and say Bake Meshes. And we're going to look here, and I can turn off ID. And then the one thing I like to change here at the beginning, and that seemed to work especially for this cube very well, is I'm going to change this front distance to 1. And when you press enter, it seems like it disappears, but it just minimized it. But there's the 1. And what this does is it defines how far out the rays can shoot to define the normal size. This is called a cage. It's kind of an invisible cage. We can import a cage if you want, but I just assume do it this way. And then I'm going to take this, and I'm going to go to the super high res, or the high res crate that we made in ZBrush, or cleaned up in ZBrush. And then we're going to say bake. And it's pretty fast. It's a pretty low res poly thing. Remember, on my crate I only really sculpted up one side. You should have all your sides sculpted up. So there we go. So we're going to pretty much do what we did last week, except we're going to do it with a crate this time. This is what the crate looks like in a high-res object. Look at with the normals looking like they're popping there. There's one of the things you'll see is how the normals don't change even when I'm on. See, let's see if I go underneath this. It doesn't actually show me what's called parallaxing, which is what we're going to talk about next time. But there we go. There's our crate. There's my crate and my low crate and my high crate. And I'm going to give you the low crate this time too, because I realized, or actually somebody pointed out to me, that your crates may not exactly match, and that could be a problem. So I'll give you my crate this week. But anyway, so there it is. Now we're going to throw some textures on it. I want to do one thing with the textures first. I'm going to take this. I'm going to move it up to the top. But right now, let's just grab one out of here. I'm going to move this a little bit there. I'm going to grab this one, and I'm going to throw it on the object because I want to talk about my unwrap. So, not that. Just close it. So my unwrap, if we go back to F1, we can see the unwrap here too. Oops. All right. My F1, I can see the unwrap on both pieces here. Pull this back out. And you can see that it's smaller here and here, but everywhere else it's the same. And that's because I put a little bit more resolution into these pieces so I could get some of these curves out of them. In theory, you should have them all the same. What pixel density talks about is you'll see they all look perfectly the same size and everything except for these pieces right here. And that means that the density of the pixels is consistent across the object. And if you know how close the object is going to be to the camera, then you can map or plan appropriately. Like if you know it's going to be a hand, then you can give it more resolution so the density be more on spot. The thing you want to avoid is having drastic changes. These little changes you're going to see don't make a huge difference unless we're looking at it here, in which case then I might have to separate these pieces out and scale them up or scale the other one down, which is what we could do. We could say I want this to scale. So let me show you. I can put a mask on here that says add white, and then we'll use our famous, my lovely happy tool, and we can click over to here and say, which is just scrolling up and down, by the way. I'm just making it this way. A lot of times what I might even do is I'll pull it over twice and take this tab, this tab, and move it over so there's two of them, because this one ends up being pretty long. It's still not long enough, but anyway. But for this time, I like it just being one. It feels like Photoshop to me. Oh, come on, stop being a jerk. Sorry. Gotta wait for it to find that box, and then we can scale it back in. Okay. So, I'll scroll down here, and then I'm going to use my famous uniform scale tool. I'm going to use my black, so it's going to take away from the mask that it's put on there, so everything is seeable through the mask. I'm going to come over to my polygon tool, and since I know it's these islands that I don't want to mess with, or I don't want to be there, I'm going to change it to island and click on this one. Oops, it's on white. There we go. Click on this one. Click on this one. I can click on this one and this one too. Okay. So now they're all the same, but what happened? Well, if I duplicate this, and you can duplicate it by Alt and drag. And I invert this, so we're going to say invert mask, and it's going to be the opposite. Now I've got my two of the same exact texture, one with a mask that's showing these, and one with a mask that's not showing these. With the one that's the mask not showing these, if I tile this now, let's say I scale this to, let me turn this off. Well, let's see what it does down here. No, we'll just do this. Yeah. Okay, so if I scale this up, I can now match that scale. I can change this to, let's say 2. That's pretty close, actually. You might have just been double it. But now I feel like I have more density. So that's the great thing about using this tool, is you can pop that in there. Mind you, what you probably would do is not scale it here, because what you end up getting is a higher res, more of the mesh being shown. See, this box right here is the actual mesh. I'm sorry, the texture. This is the texture that's being shown. Everything outside of the texture being shown is the tile. So what I'm doing is I'm condensing the texture down so it's has more density in this area. But if I look at it, if I look at these two really closely, you can see the scale is right, but the density between this one and this one are quite different. And that's because to get that same scale on here, I had to shrink the object or the map inside of here, which made the resolution less. Okay, so there's give and take with this. Do you want to do this? Is this the best way to go? It's up to you, and up to your boss. That's the real question. If your boss wants perfect density, then you would pretty much not scale this differently than this. These would be smaller and such and so forth. Okay, let me delete this one, and we'll delete this one too. And let's start working proper. I just wanted to make sure you understood pixel density. Goodness. All right. So let's open this back up. And I'm going to start with the crate having a really unpainted version of it. I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but let's do pure. Let's give it a powder coat. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so for me, that's way too grindy, but I don't want to change it out. I do want that. I just don't want that grindiness right there, that amount of grindiness. So to fix that, what do? I come into here and I do that tiling thing we just did a minute ago. And look at that. As I turn it down, it looks a little bit better. And theoretically, I should mask this out and do them the same. But anyway, so I just wanted something underneath it. I'm actually still not crazy with it. I want something dark. How about this? Yeah, that one works. And this is what we do in the beginning. You start and you come in here. You may have a vision. If I had something that was actually using as a concept, I could do that, but I don't. So interestingly, I want this to go all the way up. But see what it does to the model? It makes it all chunky. Well, that's because I have height on it. If I turn off the height, now it's just the texture that's getting that. Or if I turn on the height and turn down the strength of the height. So let's talk about how you would do that. Each of these right here also has a control inside of here. Some of the parts you can control, but each of those, but some you can't. So each of these things, right now I'm just messing with the color. When I change things in here, I'm just changing the color. If I drop down and go to height, and I have it back to the normal percent, or 11, and I change this to lower, you see that I get less of it. Okay, so I still don't have to turn it off. I can leave some of it on. So I can get a little bit more of that, what I want. And this is just an undercoat thing, and I may not even ever see this. I can also change the color. Obviously, I could have changed it down here. Maybe I should have just done that with the scratch, because I'm getting a lot of patterns. But I want to show you some other quick stuff here too. So shift and right mouse button makes you be able to pan the texture, the color, the lighting around. Okay, so suppose I wanted those bumps, but I didn't want them here. What I could also do is, I'm going to change this to base color. Just I'm used to thinking in base color, but what I could also do is duplicate this texture right here. Just grab and copy it. Boom. Now I have two. Turn on the height and go back to height real quick and turn it back up to 100. Okay, and then come back down here, and what I want to do back in base color, so I want to turn off everything but the height. So I just want the height to be there. So now when I tile it, I can tile it more, I can tile it less, I can make it, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So if you find some stuff you like, you can do duplicate layers just for the height or just for the rough. Or because the one thing you can't do between these two is you can't change the tiling of the height on the color and this, because this is the whole UV set. But you can just have multiple layers for that. What we're going to end up having is one texture. This is not making a what is it? It's not going to make a tileable texture for us. This is a one-off texture. We can make tileable, and we'll talk about that eventually. But for now, we're just going to use one texture for this whole object. And no matter if you're tiling the texture or not, it eventually puts out one texture. Okay, so I'm going to actually just go back to what I had before, that grinded one. Turn up the tiling to 5. Looks pretty good. And then change this down to something like that. Let me even go darker. I just want something dark in there. Okay. Now I'm going to come in and figure out how I want to paint it. Now there's a few ways we could do this, but I'm going to make it the easiest way possible. First thing I want to do is figure out how it's supposed to be painted. So for that, I'm going to come grab my picture. I'm going to just put this off screen, but you can pull yours up and see what it looks like, or put it off screen too. Maybe I'll throw this in the post, and that way I can put it in the shot. I just hate that it covers the shot here. So I'm going to put it up here, and the first thing I'm going to look at is, this is the gray, this is the silver, and there's red. There's really only 3 colors, so I'm going to go ahead and grab this and say, okay, let's first put on, and they're all painted metal, if you notice that too. Okay, so all painted metal except for some silver highlights over here. There's some silver there. Yeah, painted metal. Okay, so I'm going to start with the white because it's the lowest one. So I'm going to come in here, and how do I get a white painted metal? Do I see a painted metal? Nope, I see flesh like we talked about last week, but we're going to go down here to Smart Materials, and I'm going to throw one of my favorite materials on here, which is painted steel, and I'll throw it on. And right now, that looks wrong because it's red. Well, let's see how we fix that. If you notice this right here, and we talked about this last week, but if you notice this, it's got a folder. So if I click on that folder, just like in Photoshop, I can scroll this down, and I can see a bunch of the options. And the first one down here is paint. Well, this one needs to be an off-white instead of red. So I'm going to come over here to off-white. That. And then I could come back here and turn this off and see if that changes anything, or if that splotchiness is from the texture. And it is from the texture. So we could tile this up. and it's not going to do much difference, but you know, that's because there's a bunch of different things going on with the fills and stuff. So we have this, and this may be higher than I want. So what I might want to do is go back to here, go back to mask. Oh, if I did want these to be less than 2 colors, I could turn off the secondary color. And let's see, there we go. There's the secondary color. I wish you had named it that, but, or I could come in here and say multiply, but let's do it lower. We just get some difference, but not such a big deal. Okay. I'm going to come back up here and say, okay, now I do like this, but I'm not crazy about, let me go back to paint so we don't see the highlights. I'm not crazy about how much it's doing it. So I need to come in here and figure out where to break it down. The warp is in here. If we turn it off and on, you can see what it does. It's just defining it a little bit. It's blurring it out a little bit, it looks like. I'm going to turn that off for now and go back to mask. And let's see what this one's called. Mask editor. I'm going to take that mask editor and I'm going to then mess with texture 1. Let's turn up texture 2, pulls it out. So we're going to say global balance, pull it back a little bit. That's the one we want. Like that. I'm going to go global blur a little bit off, I guess. We'll take this ambient occlusion defining and yeah, that's fine. I just want something soft. I don't necessarily want anything big. And I'm looking in this area too, is mainly where I'm looking. Okay, so next thing I need to do is the red. So I have this. I could either just duplicate this one or I could throw another red one on here. In this case, I want the red and everything inside of it to only be on certain areas. So I'm going to leave the red up here, go to the white, add a white mask, make sure I'm on black, and come over to my polygon mode with black selected, and open up my textures and figure out in the picture it's red through here, these, and that. Pretty straightforward, so that's what we'll do. So we know it's this, and actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to delete this one and then add a black one. So I'm going to take it away, yeah. And then I'll come back over here, make sure it's on white, and say select this. So that one's going to be red, and we'll select this and this and this, all right? And then the sides, if I look at them, are these, and I just, oops, I need to change that from the full selection to just the polygon. So whatever polygon I touch, it will do this to. And I just want to go right down the middle, and right down the middle, just like that. Okay, and this may not be the red we want. We can change that here, make it a little bit darker. There, okay. And then I probably want to mess with these highlight things too. So the other thing I've noticed is, let's talk about these suckers. Now these suckers are visual, but not actually geometry. So if I come in here and go back to the mask and I look at this, you'll see they don't have geometry. The one piece of geometry goes all the way across. So I've got to find another way to do that. And there's a couple ways you could do that. You can go with your paintbrush, and you can turn it way down, and you can change your paintbrush by clicking inside of the paintbrushes option, brushes, and we're going to grab something like a basic hard, like that. And then we could just really shrink it down and go like this to there. Oh, we went to black. Okay. This, and holding shift gives me that line to there. And just kind of like Photoshop, it's just showing you what it's doing. Like that. Like that. I keep pushing the wrong button. And there's a couple ways we could do this too. I'm just going to give you the easy way right now. Easy is in understanding how it's working, not necessarily easy as in the fastest way. Um, there's a lot of things I wish they had, but they don't. So we'll just deal with it this way. There we go. So now I've got that set up. Let's take a look at this again here. So I know I have to do the backside, but we're just going to do the front for the class, so you guys don't have an hour of me talking. Okay, so we're going to look at that picture again right there, and we need gray, and that's kind of silver too, but we'll just say gray and silver is the last two things we need. So we're going to come in here and decide if we want to. We could theoretically just take off this, and there's your gray, or we could do the paint and do the gray that way. If I do use this gray, I want to change this iron to a little bit lighter to match. Maybe a little bit bluer. Yeah, you know, could also turn off the metalness. We'll leave it on for now. All right, I'm trying to get through this fast so you guys don't go insane. So I am going to just leave this gray as the master. And what I'll do is I'll come back into this steel painted with its, this is the white one, with its mask. And I will deselect parts of this through here. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to go, strangely, oh, there's no mask in here. This is the built mask. See this? This is the one that gets it from everything inside of here. This is the one you're going to add. So I'm going to have one there. I'm going to say white, and then I'm going to come down to black and make sure I'm over here. And then, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of little tweaky stuff you'll need to do. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to look at this in here because it'll be faster. I love this tool. And I'll just grab these like that. And this. Oh, and I should just go back to island first. Let's see, here's another one. Okay. It looks like this side and all these pieces are the last pieces. Oh, and in here. This one I may have to paint. Okay. So let's change this to polygon and instead come down here to, let me see here, where was I thinking? Oh, these. Grab these, grab these, grab these. Grab these. All right, so now we need the top. Now the top is just like before. I can't use the polygon tool in this case. So I'm going to go back to the paint tool, and you'll see I just get that paint, and I'm going to zoom in on this sucker down here, like this. And make my brush bigger. Probably. What I'll do is I'll box out these edges first. And then I'll use my pen to fill in this area up in here. If I don't like this silver, the cool thing is I can come back and mess with it. So there's that. Looks pretty close. Okay. So let's say I don't like this being so much silver. So I'm going to come down to this iron gray. I'm going to look at this inside of here, go to materials and see if I got anything I like. You know what? No. We'll come to here. Oops, smart materials, and we'll do that. Let me make this yellow scratched. I'm not sure if you guys have this. I think you do. It's yellow scratched, and you throw it on here. And what it's going to do is on top, but I want to put it underneath here. So now the only places that is getting, you know what? I don't like that yellow scratched. Sorry, what we're going to do is just duplicate this steel underneath it. All right, we'll hide that one. And we're going to take this steel and we're going to right click on this mask and say remove. And then we're going to take this and we're going to change it to a much darker gray. So like this, and again bluer. Like that. That looks pretty good. Okay. So now it looks like I got everything but what I need to on the other side there. There's another. Oh, it's right there. If I come back to this, or actually this, and select that and go to black, and then say, oops, grab this one, turn on the object and click. There we go. And then those are there. These. There we go. Okay. So go back to F2, take a look at it from this direction. Pretty good. Let's go back to paint. Let's see what it looks like here. Okay, let's give it some silver things right here. So I'm going to come up to the top here. I'm going to come into my textures again. I'm going to say regular material at this point. I want something platinum. And the platinum, you know what, no, let's do pure iron. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to and mask it again. I'm going to say black mask this time, and then we can even go back into F1 and take a look and see if it's easier to paint it on the object or if it's easier to paint it separately. And see how this is right here, one part, and then the other part is over somewhere else. I think it would be easier to paint it on the object. So I'm going to come to the object. I'm going to grab it like this. I'm going to shrink it down. And I'm on white with a black mask. Okay. Just like that. But better. Now, you'll see that the resolution you have here depends on how much resolution you have on the mesh right here. So if I come back up and I say it's 2048, I'll get a tighter resolution on that. And I'll even get more of those bumps that I don't want. So let's see where those bumps come from again. Let's turn this one off. Let's turn this one off. It's got to be, which makes sense, this one. Yep. So this one is giving me the bumps. So is it here? It is. It's this one. See how it disappears altogether right there? As I turn it on and off. Well, now we break it down to what's doing it. Is it this one? It's this one. So the question is, do we want this everywhere or do we just want to mask it out? And we're going to put on a filter and then paint. And what you'll do is you'll come in and paint out this black area so we don't get that bump map on those silver pieces that we don't want. So that one's good. If I do it a little better, it's even better, but whatever. Okay. So there you go. Now we've got this thing set up. Let's see, front. Let's take this back. All right. So there we go.